too sleepy. My name is Pepe Agell, and I'm leading the international expansion at Chartboost. Chartboost is the alternative to the ad networks for mobile games. And working with a lot of different game developers around the world, one of the things that we love about this industry is the variety of business models, the variety of sizes, strategies. And I'm very excited to have, in this panel, 3 completely different companies. We have, with different sizes, different genres, making cool games and being successful, right? So the idea of this panel is to discuss some of the ingredients of their success, understanding a little bit how completely different models can have a room in this amazing industry. So we have Martin Schultz from Decane Games. He's by himself, and he has a portfolio of over 50 titles. He's from Hamburg, so he's the local representative. We have Brett Seyler, veteran of the industry. He's been around for a long time at Unity, and he's the founder of Kriese Games with a very specific approach. He's publishing hardcore, high-quality AAA games, and he's going to tell us more about their strategy. And Sebastian Kriese from Vuga. He's managing the corporate strategy. That means that he basically works with a lot of strategic partners and looks for potential acquisitions. So thanks so much for being here. I've done this quick presentation, but I like in brief hear from you what makes your company unique. What are you guys working on, and why are you different from the other companies? Martin, you can start.
Okay. I try to run a company that makes a lot of free games, actually, with ad support plus free-to-play games. And with these 50 and above published titles, it actually works for me very good. And this is partly very simple games, kids games, slider games, puzzle games, and as well as free-to-play games. Like my latest game was RC Mini Racers, a remote control action car racing game with missiles, and a lot of in-app purchase opportunities. And so it's a range from free, simple games up to more casual mid-core games.
Right.
So like you said, a lot of different profiles on the stage here. Kerosene, I think, is different in that, as you said, we're focusing on the very, very high end of the market visually and kind of all elements of production quality. I think the other thing that makes us quite a bit different from the other publishers that I know of out there is, first, most publishers have given up on true third-party publishing. They're doing first and or second-party publishing, but not letting developers own the IP, not giving them a full stack of tech and services to compete on a level playing field with the best developers and publishers out there. So we're trying to be a real full-service offering and partner really deeply in the production process with developers that we think are capable of hitting that high production quality bar and also designing games the right way for mobile.
All right, and I'm from Vuga. Vuga is a mobile social gaming company. We have around 280 people working on high-quality titles. Our approach is we want to develop games for everyone. So that's why we have a lot of casual titles in our portfolio, but we really want to make sure that we reach the mass audience with our games that we produce. Our main vision is that we want to bring up gaming as a new kind of entertainment media. So on the same level like TV and radio, because right now it's still, gaming is perceived as something that like kids do or teenagers do, and we want to change that. We want that everyone in the world, no matter of age, gender, whatever, is playing games every day and doing that as a normal activity, like they watch videos on YouTube or listen to music on radio stations.
Yeah, I would say that in your case, Sebastian, I think that Vuga is probably, as a uniqueness, it's probably one of the few companies that have, with a strong Facebook background, that have figured out how to do mobile. So I would add this to your unique presentation, right? I have a question for Martin, right? Because being an indie these days can be very tough. And you have a lot of apps and in a lot of different app stores, right?
Yes.
And platforms. You're even making games for Mac as well.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, how do you manage to break a little bit the noise and be out there and be discovered?
Well, actually, for part of my games, I actually don't care about discoverance. So I just fire and forget, publish them in the store and forget about it, and update only when necessary. And this is one part of my apps. And the other apps is like mini racers, for example, very much care about how it goes and do cross-promotion to market it and kind of that stuff. And use my other games to promote the game. Yeah, that's most probably how it is.
Okay.
But there's no special. Well, one thing, of course, is a kind of new way to raise your downloads per day is a keyword search engine. For example, I got good success with putting keywords like Gangnam Style into the app description, and it actually works. It raised the downloads by 500 to 1,000 per day on Android. And,
interesting.
Yeah, I mean, as indie, you have to be creative these days. It's quite tough in the app stores. And the key success for me is just finding your niche and fulfill that niche and jump it into it and live it. And that worked for me since 2008 and still runs. And yeah, the good thing with all the simple games that is ad-driven by Chartboost, for example, is that it's just constant money that comes in that allows me to work on bigger projects, actually, where I make just more money out of it. So, yeah.
One of the questions that Richard just got is the split between ad revenues versus in-app revenues. What's your split in overall as a portfolio of games? Roughly
50-50.
50-50.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, and going also what you just mentioned, multi-platform is a key success, key element for me. I'm working with Unity since 2007, so I have a lot of stuff ready and can crank out games very fast. And delivering to as many markets as possible is very crucial for me to gain more audience and get more downloads and show more ads, actually, and get more interstitials.
Good. Let me ask you a little bit more about, specifically about, I mean, you've mentioned RC Mini Racers, which has been your hit. What do you think are the key elements of that success? What has made this title outstand from the rest of your games?
Yeah, I had experience in targeting young boys and young men audiences. I worked also with MTV networks and Spill networks, which have game websites up which target exactly that audience. And I was creating games for them, actually, and could test out what works most for them. And my previous most successful game was Hard Rock Racing. It was one of the most played games in Spill Networks last year. And the key elements that I found out what worked for that niche especially very good is like good rock music, lots of explosions, cars, and very simple gameplay. And yeah, that's it.
Perfect. Talking about
but that's it.
Talking about niche and talking about targeting bread, I think you're probably one of the companies here that it's more precisely targeting a specific type of users. Tell us a little bit more about your audience, and I'm very curious. I mean, where do you find this audience? How do you distribute your games?
So I think we're actually still kind of figuring out who our audience is going to be, because the weird mashup that you get when you take gamers that have console tastes or sort of like a high bar for visual quality and put a mobile device in their hands and see how they play it and what they enjoy is it's hard to predict. And I think that you can learn a lot of lessons seeing games that are just sort of quickly ported from consoles or PCs, and end up being experiences almost too immersive for mobile devices. There is an audience for those kind of games out there. Definitely, they're sort of where a tablet is a substitute for that PC gaming session or that console gaming session. I think that's going to grow, but I think there's an even more interesting audience out there that has I guess, an interest in that very high visual quality bar and really interesting IPs. There are other reasons to do the IPs sort of at that quality bar, defensibility and whatnot. But that like a more relaxed play session, a slower pace, a more interruptible game session on these smaller screens. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm curious. I mean,
you're also going to ask about how we do UA or how do we? Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, where do you find your users? Where are they, and how can you reach them?
So the first game that we've launched, the only game that we've launched so far is Bladeslinger. We that came out right before Thanksgiving. It had a very big following in like the Touch Arcade audience. Had like a preview trailer with over 100,000 views and no marketing. I think the IP just sort of stuck with people, and no one really knew what the gameplay was actually going to be like, other than it was going to be kind of actiony. So it was just one of those IPs that really resonated with a particular crowd that was growing on mobile, and finding that crowd where it was having discussions around the game and just engaging with them, that helped, I think, quite a bit. But also, you know, we did some interesting things. That game launched as a paid app. As you know, the tactics for doing UA for a paid app are incredibly limited. You have to be super creative. One of the things I did was I started looking at sponsoring podcasts. I sponsored podcasts that had a listenership that I thought was that, like, you know, they want a console or PC-like game session on their mobile device, and that turned out to be really really effective, actually. But once the game goes free, you know, we'll be running, you know, campaigns with you guys, running campaigns with Flurry, no doubt, and, you know, probably several other common channels. Mm-hmm. But with the targeting that you guys provide for, you know, like we'll be looking at people that enjoy probably high-end game loft games and games like Infinity Blade and whatnot.
Digging a little bit more on this high quality of the graphics, I think this is a commonplace in the console world, but it's not it's not the case on mobile, right?
Sure.
Do you think that this is an advantage or it's a disadvantage for you guys?
Oh, I mean, it's definitely an advantage, but it's it obviously comes with cost as well. It's not free. It's an advantage to go out looking different and in a lot of ways better than all the other stuff out there. You don't have to do as much UA just to get an audience into your game to understand whether the game even works, whether it retains users, whether they monetize. You get some of that stuff for free. One of the reasons why a lot of the studios I work with, both those that I publish their games or don't, that I just like know as an investor, those that are capable of it, I recommend go higher up the visual quality bar than they would think to aim normally, and take a little more risk on the production side and with production costs than they might initially think, because I think that the costs of going out looking like a lot of other things and then having to solve UA are high, and they're going up really fast. So it's just a little edge, I think, when you go to market. The platforms also love it. Mm-hmm. You know, all the way up and down the Android ecosystem, they love it. The chipset vendors, the handset OEMs, the carriers, they will help you if you make their hardware look good. So there are definitely advantages to it.
Cool. When I talk to indie developers, one of the main dilemmas that they all have is, should I go through a publisher? Should I self-publish myself? I have a double question. For the part of the table that publishes games from other people, but also for Martin. I mean, let's start with Martin. Have you considered looking for a publisher? Do you think that for an indie developer like you, it still makes sense for the kind of games that you're making?
Yes, there is. For my next game, I'm actually considering and already talking to some publishers.
Okay.
One thing that a publisher can actually put on the table is users. So if my next game is a free-to-play racing game with custom-created tracks and a track virtual economy where users can buy, create, and sell tracks, and this needs an initial push of players to actually have a base of tracks and a growing economy. So this is actually a point where I think about getting to a publisher, because you just have users. For example, Spill Games, I'm talking with Spill Games, they have insane amounts of users they can drive on mobile apps. And this is just really an advantage, not only to push in the store charts, it's just also that this is also paying users. So yeah, I'm considering actively it, and but for selected titles.
Yeah. And I know that you're defending a different model of publishing. You actually had a talk about this today. Unfortunately, I couldn't attend. But what's this different model of publishing?
I don't know that it's. I mean, I guess it's. I don't know that it's a lot different than everything else out there, other than that we really get our hands dirty with production and design if we can get involved early in projects. I think we stand up a lot of the same tech, or license and leverage a lot of the same tech that the best developers and publishers out there in the world do, and a lot of I think it's just the classic model where you've got specialization and economies of scale, and it's very difficult for a mobile developer to afford contagion analytics, a bunch of other licensed tech that we'd use, or that you'd have to build yourself. That would be, well, it would. I mean, it would break. Like, I doubt Martin wants to invest that kind of money, for like, small titles over and over again. It's a choice that most small to mid-sized studios don't have the option of looking at. So I think if you're building the right kind of title, the title that can leverage infrastructure like that, it makes a lot of sense. If you're not, if you're building kind of one-off games that are a little bit niche and will find an audience without a lot of muscle behind it, you don't need a publisher for that.
And Sebastian, I mean, you're the big kid here in that table, right? And you have a lot of pressure because you have your own titles that have been very successful. What are you looking for, and how do you define Vuga as a publisher? Yeah,
so we don't see us as a publisher. I've got this question a lot. Do you want to publish our games? Because you guys at Vuga, you have like 55 million monthly active players in your game. Why don't you send traffic to our games? I've got this a lot. And we also had a lot of internal discussions. Would we go into that direction of publishing? But I can say like a clear no to that. We only develop our own games in-house, making sure that we reach our quality standards and then do self-publishing of our games. Going the publishing direction would just add too much overhead to our company. We see us as a very flat company with having independent gaming teams and producing their titles. And going the publishing way, we would need a couple of new roles in the company. Even we would need biz dev guys, we would need a financial guy looking into numbers. So that's why publishing is not an option for us, and we continue the way producing our titles, making sure that our games are fun. And it's a matter of opportunity cost, and I see that investing more time in our games and investing the time to really polish that, it's working much better for us instead of advising other companies how to produce their games.
Can I jump in? Don't you still need biz dev guys?
No, actually not. Why don't we need business guys or business development guys? I was like talking to companies. I mean, it's me talking to smaller studios and working on cooperations and talking to other gaming companies to see if there is something that we could do together in the future. But beside that, we have no, actually not. We don't need a business development team on their side.
I'm curious, like I'm very personally curious too. How many staff do you think you have focused on just publishing tasks, like your UA team plus et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, maybe I break that down. So we have around 280 people, all of them working in our office in Berlin. So we have quite a big office, super nice one. So whenever you're in Berlin, you are invited to visit our office. Out of those people, I would say 70% are actually working in gaming teams. And gaming teams means they are producing their games, meaning in the roles game designer, artist, whatever you need to produce that games. And the remaining 30% you could split up into all the supporting functions we have. And that's mainly for us HR. Recruiting is super big. We're still growing and we are hiring a lot. So if you need a new job, check out our jobs page.
We're competing here.
Recruiting is big for us. We obviously need a finance team. We need a localization team. And we have a small marketing team. But that's it. We really want to make sure 70% is working on the game development side, producing our games, polishing the games, instead of having any other shared services. We don't even have a shared Vuga backend, I would say, or shared frameworks. Meaning like the game teams, they decide how they want to produce their games. We don't want to limit the experience they want to produce in a new game, saying you have to use our framework. So we don't see that as an option for us. We rather go into a blank sheet approach and say, whenever we start a new game, think crazy. And if you think you need another way of producing that game, that's completely fine if that's more fun than going another way.
Brett, what's the breakout in your team?
Oh, and mine. Oh, well, so Kerosene's team is like almost entirely focused on publishing tasks. We have a couple of people, like sort of 1.5, maybe more if you count me sometimes, working on production and design stuff, and UA, and head for data science, and sort of we have Floater that basically covers other stuff like whatever it needs. But they're all there are a lot of very specialist skill sets that seem to every successful mobile developer or Facebook developer, certainly Wooga would be one of them, that I've talked to and like asked that question. Typically they have a team at least that size or much larger focused on pure publishing tasks. It's not all the time. Sometimes it's associated just with game launches. But with as many games as Wooga launches, I would think it's a pretty serious dedicated staff. That's why I was curious. Sorry to hijack the question, but thanks for answering.
Yes. So no dedicated publishing staff.
Cool. Sebastian, what's the pressure now for Wooga to come up with a new title? I mean, we all have in mind Diamond Dash. We've learned the dynamics. I mean, are you going to change completely the genre? Are you exploring other genres? What's the general creative process, and what's that pressure that you have now?
I mean, it's always pressure to develop new games and making sure that it's fun, right? So what we do is a lot of prototyping for that. So we take our most experienced product managers out of the teams, like when the game is already like live for a couple of months, maybe years, and then take the most experienced guys, putting them onto prototyping projects and looking into new and crazy ideas, everything that would come up, testing stuff, and doing that for several months. So we really take the time to find the right idea up front before we launch the game and before we go into the full production of a game. I mean, we've shared the story that we had this dream cruiser game that we skipped or canceled even before launch because we figured out during the prototyping and during the production it's not fun enough. And we tried to avoid realizing that moment that a game is not fun and putting that into the prototyping phase, like very early stage, instead of doing a production for 6 months and then realizing, oh, the game is not fun. So yes, we do that a lot, prototyping and finding new game ideas. Like I said, we always follow a blank sheet approach, not limiting to stuff that we did in Diamond Dash, saying we have an incredible Diamond Dash framework, and that's why we must do another Diamond game. So that's not the way we do and approach that. It's completely blank sheet, and whatever they want to do, and if they see a market and the potential for that, it's open to the product manager to test that idea. We don't limit it to casual games. And if you are really curious about what's coming up, we have a big press event next week, next Thursday, and announcing a couple of good stuff coming up in the next weeks.
Nice, we'll wait for it. Perfect. So my last questions go around monetization and how do you define your business model of your game. I mean, Kerosene with Bladeslinger has explored the paid per download. How has it been since Thanksgiving? What are the learnings, or if there's any mistake? I mean, we're always looking for mistakes. And what's gonna make you go freemium? And what do you think is gonna happen to that?
Sure. So we got involved fairly late with the production of Bladeslinger, and it's a big, beautiful console-like experience with a beginning and an end, and it's already fairly niche, and as you can imagine, it's I mean, that's funny. There are people that put like many tens of hours in, but the retention numbers really didn't support, and we saw this in soft launch, didn't support going out of the gate as a free-to-play game. And it's got the potential for that, we think. And so right now the team is actually working on some modes to extend gameplay with, sort of in, I guess, a horde mode or survival mode is the best way to think about it. But essentially, the foundation for Bladeslinger was not good for a free-to-play game. It was not designed for that from the ground up. The team got to learn a lot of interesting lessons in that process and learned like why it's actually important to think about this stuff very, very early on. If you're entertaining free-to-play, we did manage to sort of onto that square peg round hole. We did manage to bolt on an interesting enough economy that about 50% of the revenues from IEPs, even at $2.99 for a download, it's not terrible. But it's still not quite strong enough that we thought we'd do better going out of the gate as free to play. It will go free to play eventually, I'm sure.
And now that you're about to launch the Android version, right?
Yes.
Is it going to be paid per download as well?
We're gonna launch paid on Android mostly because I want to see what happens.
Okay, interesting.
Do you plan to support more platforms, actually? For example, Windows Mobile and...
Well, yeah, I'll probably talk to Microsoft about that. That's we'll see. Oh, I doubt that. Sorry. Sorry, RIM fans. No, I mean, you know, Unity has this this interesting program that that I actually started called Union. Bladeslinger will be part of that. So, you know, it might end up on some of these other platforms that don't have our primary attention.
Mm-hmm. Martin and Sebastian, what are your learnings on free-to-play, right? What makes you, how was the monetization decision-making process, and what are the learnings and mistakes that you've done?
Yeah. Actually, when I started in the App Store back in 2008, I was starting with paid apps, and it slowly transitioned to free apps, actually. And I was thinking that I cannot compete with bigger productions as a one-man army shop. And so I thought, what is my niche to go into? And I thought free plus ads back in 2009 is a good way to start. And I tried it. I had short iteration cycles, so I could try out a lot of stuff. And with 50 titles, you can look at the analytics and see and try out different things to try to monetize a bit better in that way and that way. And from that experience, you learn step by step better what the next game should have from the beginning on or what not. And so it was very early clear for me that it's just only a way for me to go free to play or free at all. And it works out, yes.
Cool. Sebastian.
And I think for us, definitely free-to-play is our way, how we approach the gaming development there. I can't remember that we ever had a discussion if we would do a paid download game. I mean, even looking into the numbers, you could get a couple of thousand downloads if you do a paid download game, if you're in the top 5 maybe. And what we see in Diamond Dash is per day more than 100,000 downloads coming for that game, and you would never
on iOS only.
On iOS only, and you would never achieve that with a paid download, and that's definitely not possible. So the opportunity is much bigger on the free-to-play space. From the learnings, I mean, I talk a lot to independent developers and looking into their prototypes and games. One of the things I noticed whenever I ask them, how do you want to approach the free-to-play, I've seen games where the people say, we will offer customization for the avatar of the user. And that's like the premium feature they want to add to the game. Just a few numbers in Monster World. I looked into it. Where do we actually get the money from in Monster World? And I looked into customization for the avatar that we had in the beginning. And it's actually 0.3% of the overall revenue coming through customization. So it's not that big as you already think. And even for the decorative items, so items that have no function and that you can place in your garden. So it's always like people saying, yeah, we have to offer that. It's only 2% of the revenue. And then I could go to the categories and saying like expansion, instant build, what is that? Like whenever you have a feature or you build something in your garden and you want to complete it now instead of waiting, it's only like 6% of the revenue. And even the virtual coins in the game, that's for us 9% of the revenue. So now the question, where is the revenue coming from, if not for all those features? For us, it's Magic Wands. You've seen that in the presentation, but Magic Wands is I would call it a consumable item in the game that you can use to speed up planting your stuff in the game. It's really consumable, and you need that to progress faster in that game. And 33 70% of our revenue is coming through that channel, and the remaining 30% is a crafting feature that we have in the game. So that's like 2 really big features that help you to progress in the game, to go forward instead of doing the decoration items. So please don't pitch games and say you want to sell decoration items.
Well, actually, for me, racers actually have a different experience. I'm selling cars there, a lot of cars, and actually I also have a decoration feature. We can just exchange wheels and change the antenna of the remote control car and stuff like that. It actually works very good. It's probably not the same amounts of what you get there, but actually it's probably based on the user group that I have, that there might be more, they might be more about how their car looks, about stuff like that. And yes, but I agree totally that the usual way to make money in free-to-play is just to offer shortcuts for the game. So if you want to get there more quickly, just pay some money. Yeah.
And in that split of revenues that you were talking about, I guess, do you have some revenues coming from advertising as well?
Unfortunately, no. Not unfortunately, no. We don't have any advertisement in our games. Mm-hmm. So we believe that we can monetize our games by providing the best service to the users, providing high quality games. That's why we don't have advertisement in the games beside our own cross promotion.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Cool. So I'd like to open it up for questions. Feel free to ask these 3 completely different companies. I just realized that there's one similarity, at least between the 2 of you, which is at least your love for flammable gas and liquids, I guess, from decaying and kerosene. That's probably the only similarity I can think of. But let these guys ask any questions.
Come on, guys.
Yep. There's a question over there.
One moment. Hey, it's Bushtan. What's your experience with selling content in games like level packs?
Well, actually, I would say monetizing level packs is the worst choice you can do. It just doesn't work. Level packs is a no-go for monetization. Everything else, yes, but this is the very last thing you should think about.
I agree. If that's where you end up, is probably a bad design to start with for free to play.
I would agree as well, because you want to have in a free-to-play world, you want to provide a game that you can play forever, more or less, at least for a long period. If you think from the beginning on you want to sell level packs, you're already like, oh, the user will consume the content at some point, and then you will always be too slow to provide the content for your whales, and that's why, yeah, if you can avoid it from the beginning, don't do that.
Also, you have a strong break in the retention rate. Actually, if at the point where you just offer the user the next level pack, otherwise he cannot continue. You have a strong fall off in the retention rate. So users go away. Just I play the next game.
Any other questions?
Okay, to all of you, the whales, how big percentage of the total revenue do they give, roughly? The whales, yeah. Are you familiar with the expression?
Yes. Less than 1%. Less than 1%.
You mean that you define? I guess the question is how
you have to define whales, right?
Right. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I mean, I think it depends on the size of the economy in your game. Bladeslinger, for example, the economy is, I mean, if you spend a couple $100, you're probably done. There's not too much more to consume. So that's a whale in that game. And they're actually, I don't know, I think the last time we looked at the numbers, it's more than 20% actually.
I actually don't have any numbers in my mind, but we obviously segment our users and look into it. But I think overall, like the first decision, what we do is like, is it a paid user or not a paid user? But looking into the rates, it's like you've said, we also have like a completely different titles comparing Diamond Dash and Monster World, where you have in one game a whole economy where you can buy all different stuff and can spend a lot of money, while in Diamond Dash you you only have the power-ups that you use in one session in one game. So different approaches and different numbers. But I don't have any shares right now in my mind.
I had a question. What methods do you use to determine pricing of your services?
What methods do you use to determine the pricing of your items within the in-app store? Yeah.
Well, I mean, we kind of take a rough pass before soft launch by really just play testing the heck out of the game and see how compelling the items are, and then we do a lot of split testing in soft launch and even more after we're fully launched.
Well, yes, the same as Brett, and plus adjusting based on the analytics data. So even after game launch, adjusting.
Yeah, agree on that. So we have data scientists in all gaming teams just looking into numbers, analyzing those results, doing split tests. We never stop actually doing split tests. We still have running split tests in our games that we launched in 2010. And so we always improve that, looking into that and changing it constantly.
So yeah, I would say too, one of the important things in just like designing these free-to-play games is having as much of the game dynamically manageable as possible. If you're going to do a freemium game, that will really save your butt, especially on iOS where the update cycles are pretty slow. So we have all sorts of levers in Bladeslinger exposed to a management interface where we make server-side pushes to things like how many enemies spawn at a particular battle, how much health do they have, how much soft currency is granted as a loot drop, et cetera, et cetera.
Are you guys adapting your games to regional markets or to different platforms? I know, like, do you tweak in-game purchases? Do you tweak the prices? Or
no, one size fits all for me.
Are we adapting? So what we definitely do is localization for all the countries and making sure that we provide local currency as soon as the platform provides it. You know, like Google Play didn't offer it in the first place, but they're working on it, and that's what we do. Yeah, that's it basically.
So we actually only did English out of the gate with Bladeslinger, and our top country by use was China. Not probably different from a lot of your experiences, but we're doing now. This is particularly important for Android. You know, Japanese, Korean, Chinese. We'll probably do Spanish as well. But in terms of managing or changing other variables for localization, one of the things that this sort of like live management system that we use supports is identifying cohorts either by geography or play sessions or just play patterns, and changing, you know, these variables I mentioned before dynamically in the game just for that user cohort. So we can, for example, have an entirely different merchandise store for Chinese users than Russian users, or a much tougher game for say German users that, you know, are a little more inclined to grind and dig in and yeah. So.
How do you retain your users? I mean, you've got high-paying users, or you've got a lot of users. So what do you do to keep them? Because we're talking about marketing, and there's that marketing in the front, but there's also marketing later on, which makes them more valuable.
Yeah. I've said that in a presentation, I think last week. The best way for the user acquisition and buying users is provide a high-quality game and make sure that the game is fun in the first place, and the users will return. For us, the social integrations, especially in our mobile games, is huge. Looking into Diamond Dash, where we leverage all the Facebook features, starting from Open Graph, using request notifications in the game, really helps us to get users back into the game, because we provide, or we send push notifications to a user when your friend passes you. Even if he plays on Facebook, you would get a push notification on your phone, and that helped us a lot to get users back into the game. We shared like that we've got around 1.8 million monthly active visitors just coming from Facebook into Diamond Dash. So that's a big channel for us. But like I've said, more important is make sure the game is fun.
Yeah, I would agree that the most important thing is just to actually design the game to support like fun for a long time in the first place. But we also see pretty good benefits from the social infrastructure we use in the games. Just bumps on leaderboards, messages about new challenges, things like that. We license some social tech for that in Kerosene, and it's white label stuff that we skin. But we wanted something cross-platform, sort of like a modern Open Feint, which there's a big gap in the market for that right now. But that stuff's important. Also, if you have the game to support it, in-game social features like chat, clans, community, that stuff really seems to help a lot with retention.
Well, for the simple games, I actually don't care about the users. For the bigger games, actually, it's that I try to see where they leave the game. Actually, if there's some design error or whatever I did. The other part is clearly designing a game to be endless. For example, Mini Racers was a huge design mistake that the gameplay was limited. So it was clear that at some point the users go out. So my next game is absolutely built around endless gameplay, and user create content to actually that actually create content that I would have never ever thought of. So I hope with that model that I actually can increase the retention rate way more and get the total lifetime value of a user longer and longer.
I think we're running out of time unless there's any other question. Just one question over there.
Thanks. Just a question about Chartboost, just if you had time. I'm just wondering, would you be able to share the top 5 tips to maximize ad revenue using Chartboost?
Good.
Easy one.
Well, we have a huge network of games where we have a lot of advertising campaigns. One of the things that we're trying to provide is full transparency. And for example, we show you exactly who your advertisers are and what's the amount of impressions, clicks, and installs, money earned from each one of them. So you can easily see the CPM per advertiser. We strongly recommend to filter out advertisers that don't give you good eCPMs, and you can do that. And then for those who are performing amazingly well, because sometimes there's apps that for various reasons they have amazing performance and resonate very well, we strongly recommend doing direct deals, right? So you can guarantee or reserve part of your inventory to those specific advertisers that resonate best with your app, right? So this is normally our piece of advice. Having an ad network or plugging into an ad network that gives you a lot of advertisers is great, but once you've detected those that pay you best money or best eCPMs, dedicate your inventory to them, right? Yep. So thanks so much, guys. And if you have any questions, come to the stage.